Mambos, my name is Marek, and this is the second session that I'll be taking and guest hosting for Muthoni, who is spending a time with her bebe. Which, congrats again. We miss you, girl. I'm basically then going to be hosting the perFORM Music Incubator podcast on her behalf, together with
Miss June
June.
Gachui.
We go way back, girl.
Yes, we do.
So fun. We're going to be talking today about money and how to look after money, from royalties to rights to all of that, to how you should treat with money. So super happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm
Let
happy to
me
be here.
please introduce yourself
Sure.
to our audience.
Okay, so my name is June Gachui. I'm an intellectual property and entertainment lawyer. Have been focusing on that area of law for almost 13 years now. I'm also a performer, singer-songwriter, actress, or thespian, I think is the more fancy
Renaissance
way.
woman.
Voila. But I do a whole bunch of other things. But ultimately, I describe myself as a creator and producer of art, basically. Whether it's me coming up with a concept or working with a team or writing my own things, whether it's for stage or for a script, for screen rather,
Yeah.
or for studio. So I'm also a radio show host for the last year and something.
At Capital, right?
At Capital,
Yeah.
so they pay me to talk. I'm okay doing that. So I'm using these examples to show that, you know, as artists, as creatives, there's so many ways we can use our talent to make money, and we'll definitely be talking a little bit more about that.
And my name is Marek. I'm the founder and MD at Africa Centric Entertainment, or well known as ACE. We're a talent festival and a brand agency. And that's how we know each other from way back before then
Yeah,
as
of
well.
course.
So awesome. So let's jump into it. Money is the topic. I guess that is why most people do what they do, right? It is a fact of life that we need to be able to make money. And especially in the creative sector, even though a lot of people connect it to something that you do this because that's your talent or this is what you like to do, at the end of the day, in order to be able to do this, you need to make money so that you can
Exactly.
sustain yourself and are able to focus on your passion and your
Yeah.
career,
Yeah.
right? So why don't you just give us a rundown from your perspective, because that's how you started. You just told us all the different things that you do.
A few, because of time.
And these
I
are
don't-
all different revenue streams that
Yeah.
you can then they compound,
from.
and you know it all adds up,
Yeah.
which is really exciting. So let's go through it one more time.
Okay.
And what, as a creator, as a musician, as an artist, as talent, as an influencer, somebody who is in the creative business, right, or in the entertainment business, what are the different avenues of income that are
Okay.
available to you to consider?
That's a great question. And I think I agree with you completely. Having the passion and the talent is one thing. Being able to package it from a business point of view is the next thing. And not everybody has that skill. We talk about at JGIP, when we do our training, the funnel. That at the, you know how a funnel looks. It's wide at the front and then it's very thin at the end. So many people go in. Many people are like, oh, I like to sing, I like to draw, I like to be a, you know, film producer, whatever it is that the art form is. But then only a few people come out successful on the end of the funnel, which is a lot thinner. And that's a great demonstration, I think, of how what did the people who came out successful do right, and what did the rest do wrong. And I think I can share a few pointers. The first thing is getting their contracts in place, okay? And that is across the board, because what is the service that you're being asked to render? Is it a service? Are you creating something? Is the ownership of the thing you're creating passing? So if, Marek, you had a concert today and you asked me to come and sing, I'm rendering a service. I'm coming to perform my songs or whatever at your event. If you ask me to compose a song for you for your event or for your product, then I must understand that you're commissioning me, and that the IP and the intellectual property in the ownership begins with me. But as soon as you commission, the ownership will pass after you've paid me and I transfer the rights to you. So even at the beginning of every relationship, you have to be thinking about it like this. And I know one of the things that probably plagues us creatives is we get excited and we just jump. And then after we go, hey, wait a minute. Did I think about A, B, C, and D? So contracts, because it helps you right at the outset, at the origination of the relationship. So once you identify what your skill is, if it's writing music, then you can write for yourself, you can write for TV, you can write for film, you can write for radio, you can write for other musicians. And that one skill then can earn you revenue in four different ways.
streams.
Okay. If you are a performing artist, if you sing, again, you can record and sing for yourself. You can do studio sessions for people who need background vocalists or who need instrumentalists to come and do solos. So you have to start to think of yourself as a product, the way it would be on a shelf in a supermarket. And could you just pick the product and replicate it and mass produce it to an extent? Okay. The other thing I think that's important to consider is not being too emotionally attached to the thing that you're able to do. So I always give this example and I say, if I could write 100 songs in a year, I would probably not need to record 100 songs. I would probably want to keep 10 to myself, and the other 90 I could sell, like sell them and not be emotional about selling them. Why is that important? Keep the 10 that you think you can fund, release, and produce for yourself, but the other 90 then become things that you can sell to earn revenue. And the more emotionally detached you are, because you're approaching it from a business point of view, the more you're able to say, this love project of mine is going to cost me $1 million bob. I don't have $1 million bob. But if I sold even 50 of these things, I could earn 2 million bob and invest back the million bob in my product that I want to produce. So it's just about shifting. The talent is there, the skill is there, but it's about shifting the way you see the thing you're able to create. Okay. I think the final thing is also being able to brand yourself correctly. You mentioned earlier, the word influencer or endorse people who endorse products and services for others. And that sort of opens up a whole new world. If I feel, I don't know what example I can give. Think of a young mother, and Pampers, which is a well-known brand for diapers, would like to be able to have me or this young mother be able to say, this is a great product, A, B, C, D, E. That sort of then creates a relationship, because if you know who your audience are, if you know who your following is, then why not position yourself and be intentional about what your brand says about you? I don't think creatives or artists, musicians specifically, think too much about that. And I think they really should. We've seen great examples of sort of brand collaborations where, the biggest one that happened in the last sort of decade or so was Dr. Dre and Beats, Who would have thought about that? It's such an obvious thing now, but we're like, why didn't anybody think about the guy who creates beats and headphones? But if you start to think of your brand like that, that opens up a whole other avenue with your brand, with your logo, merchandise. So, the list is endless, Marek, but ultimately, the bottom line is, if you have thought of the one thing you do as a product, how many products can you put on a shelf that then can have longer shelf life? Because at the end of the day, even when we speak about royalties, which is going to be my next point, we say that royalties serve you best after you've died. And it's such a morbid thing to say, but it is true. Most of the people who've passed on, their music is earning them revenue now. Michael Jackson, he also earned when he was alive, but more from live concerts. So when you're alive, perform, record, do the things that you cannot do once you've gone to meet your maker. Then the products that you've left us with, the art you've left us with, will continue to generate revenue for your next of kin, your heirs, your family. But it's not the thing to rely on 100% now. Get your money from live performances, get your money from studio sessions, from selling, from downloading, from streaming, So I think that's one of the things. So royalties is a thing. I know it's a big controversial discussion here in Kenya. Nobody likes to hear the words camp, prisk, MCSK. Everyone goes, those people.
It's unfortunate, though.
It is unfortunate, but my challenge back always is this. You're making noise from the outside. Nothing is perfect when it starts, because nobody knows what they're doing. But why are you not a member of this bad organization? You can leave if you say, I've tried my best, which a few people have done. But I always say there's a new generation, a new wave of really intelligent, really on it. They're not sleeping on the job. They're
Yeah.
working. They're putting in their hours. They've done their more than 10,000 hours. So why don't you then invest some time and give back and say, if I'm jumping in and I've been in for 5 years, if I can make even a little bit of a difference, because the guys who've been there for 40 years, well, I mean, surely what do they know? Right? The times have changed. Technology has changed. So how we collect royalties has not changed. The principle of the law
Yeah.
that anybody who uses anybody else's musical work or sound recording, the audio that you hear, you must pay.
But we've had several reiterations in the last, I think, 3-4 years, and just recently as well, in terms
of the
of the
Copyright
Copyright
Act. Yes, but the things that were
impacts.
changing in the Copyright Act had to do with piracy.
And quick fact, I mean, apparently, the Kenyan entertainment industry loses up to 92 billion shillings to piracy every year.
And that it could even be higher. It could even be higher, because if we think of the creative economy, it's not just music. It's books, it's film, it's clothes, fashion, culture, paintings, everything. So it could potentially even be higher than that figure. But yes, the Copyright Amendment Act, that was the major thing, and being able to then get the rights holders a higher percentage where their skiza tunes were concerned,
So
which
with
is just,
your
again,
value-added services and distributors and stuff, so that they kind of balance out a little bit the percentages that go to the
which is so necessary.
distributors and to the artists, so that it goes from the 90-10 or 80-20
It
that
was
it used to be.
80-15. And the
85-15,
85-15,
and
and
now
then
I
it
think
was
it's close to
70-30,
70, and
and
now
now it's closer to, I think,
60-40,
or
right?
something, or 52 something, I think I saw.
Yeah.
But it's better.
So before we get into the detail of that, why don't you just also wrap out a little bit for the viewers and for who's watching some of the major rights? So you got your master rights, your copyrights, your trademarks. Can you just give us a quick,
sure.
one-liner on
Happy to.
each?
Happy to. So let's start with music, because that's the main base of this incubator. So music has two major rights: the musical work, which we call the copyright, and the master right, which is covered under the sound recording. So the way I think it's easy to think about it is the copyright covers the person who writes the lyrics, the person who composes the melody, so those musical notes that you see on a musical sheet, the person who arranges the music, because we have heard the same song performed differently by different people. That's called an arrangement. And the person who publishes, and that becomes the marketer, really, of the song. To remind people, the reason why the publisher was part of this team was because music used to be printed on pieces of paper. And so you publish, the way you publish a book, you publish those sheets of music, and those are the ones that churches would take and go and buy and get rights on to perform, like hymns, but also orchestras and also other musicians. With time and with technology, that's kind of obviously changed quite significantly. But the publisher's role then becomes, if June wrote 10 songs, then the publisher takes those 10 songs and sees, does anybody want to put them in a film? Does anybody want to do a cover recording of them? Does anyone want to do a new rendition? So those are the four main rights under the copyright and the musical right. Now we move over to what we call the related rights. Related rights cover the people who come to bring the song to life. So up until this point, imagine that we still have just this sheet of paper with words, musical notes, and everything else. But now a singer comes in, an instrumentalist comes in into a studio, and the person who holds, who owns the structure and funds the recording of the project, then gets the musical production. I guess we call them record labels now, yeah? So you're either an independent music producer or a record label. And so the law then says that these related rights people also have some rights. Now, it's slightly different from the copyright because it's a recognition of the contribution that's made. Because you can argue that without the original piece of paper, what are these guys doing? Okay, so if you look at the song as a whole, we say that the copyright is 50% and the related rights is the balance of the 15%, 50%.
And the related rights, what you meant, is the master rights.
Is the master rights. And the people covered there are the performers who get rewarded for their contribution, and the record label or the producers who own the master. So in our industry, we say, oh, I want to have ownership of my masters, but do we really know what that means. Did you pay for it?
Hmm.
If I walk into Studio X and I say, I want to record, but I don't have 100K right now because that's what's on the invoice, they might say to me, no, don't worry, you don't have to pay us right now, but we'll own your master because I paid for it. That's just what the law says. The day you want to buy it back, it won't cost you 100,000 because maybe then it's the most famous song right now. And if I were the record label, I'd say, I think you owe me a bit
But do
more
you
money.
agree with the fact that master rights should be, if somebody pays, and this is where record labels really get what they get their hands on, is
Yeah.
because record labels' role is primarily
To
to
facilitate.
facilitate payments. So basically, they're like lending institutions because
Yes.
they're going to get that, they're going to. So number one, if they pay for it, they own it, and oftentimes it's 100%. Second of all, they're also marketing machines, and
Yes.
because they have offices all around the world, like Universal Music Group, Warner,
Exactly.
etc. But yeah, one of the main things for record labels, and also one thing to know is what they're not management companies,
That's true.
right? And that's why a lot of people, they get burned with when they
The
sign to, they
expectation.
expect that, oh, now I've signed, now
Yes.
tell me what to go and where to show up. That's still up to your manager that you should keep.
That's true.
And your management team, even that relationship needs to be managed, And a lot of people give record labels bad rep, and there are pluses and minuses to them, but they're just like, they didn't do anything for me. Well, it is how you manage that relationship and what you got out of them that also counts. But my question was, do you believe that when a record label pays for your recording, that they should own 100% of your master?
So I have two opinions on that.
Yeah.
And my first opinion is, if I cannot do for myself what the record label is doing for me, then that's my first point of departure. Like, how quickly will my music get to market?
But it's changed a lot in the last
It has.
10, 20 years.
It has.
Dramatically.
Secondly, because of how much more reasonably priced, and that's why I'm saying history is everything for me. We can't sort of make determinations about the future without looking at what has happened before. And so we have software that I can sort of record myself on my phone. I can record my whole album right now on my phone. So because the cost investment element is much less, and that I have social media presence, part of the things that the record label was going to give me has reduced. And I think that's the basis for opening the negotiation to, no, I'm not going to give you 100% because I now have 200,000 followers, 1 million followers, or whatever it is. And I am actually helping the product move faster, the streams to be much higher than maybe 20, 30 years ago when none of this was happening. And they had to do, press, they had to do media tours, they had to do all of that and use their entire network. So I think you're very right. Things have changed. And if even, let's say it's a discovered artist, an undiscovered artist who has 2 followers, his mom and his dad. Like, at that point, you are putting in a lot more. So it's the investment. But I also think that the timeline and the commitment of record labels is the thing that people need to be careful about. So if I say I'm going to sign artist Y, then I need to be sure that in a 3-year period, my turnaround is, how do I get this music on every single platform and get this artist on every single stage that I can possibly get them on to quickly recoup my money, make my little return on investment, and move to another artist while this is, or continue with artist Y. But I think sometimes record labels, part of the bad rep is they kind of just sit for the same reason you're raising, because I signed you as my artist on my record label. I'm not your manager. And so that confusion then helps the record label look bad, to be very honest, because if they helped to say, okay, bring your manager. Do you have a manager? Get a manager. Let's engage with somebody who understands the business. You go be the creative, because you shouldn't have to do both, which is a really good segue to say to all the artists listening, invest in a team. It doesn't have to be 25 people.
So we'll jump onto that next, I think, in terms of how to now manage this money. We've discussed the different avenues through which an artist can earn, the different rights they can consider. Before we go into now how the money, what we advise the talent, and how to advise talent and artists, how to manage their income. Split sheets is always a big word that we haven't touched upon. It's specifically to music as well.
Yes.
And I'm sure it can relate to many other industries as well. But split sheets between copyright and master right, where does it really play a role? Where does it fall?
Okay. The primary place
is
is under copyright. Because if you write the song today, even when you're sort of just at so-and-so's house chilling, on a piece of paper, on your laptop, draw up the split sheet
right then and there
at that hangout. Don't wait for the song to be recorded. Don't wait for the song to be a hit. Don't even upload it on any platform, because every single streaming platform now, true or false, will ask you to write the names of
Yep.
everybody who has contributed. Every aggregator will ask you for those names now. So if you don't have the information, then the split sheet becomes null and void for you, right? So what a split sheet is a reflection of anybody who has played any of the roles we mentioned: author, composer, publisher, arranger. There could even be a co-author, a co-arranger, a co-publisher, performer, instrumentalist, session musician, featured artist, and then of course record label. So if you have all of those lines, if the people are there, the truth is you can also be all of those things. If you wrote, composed, sang,
Yeah, you
rapped,
can, yeah.
produced, funded it yourself, you can just put your name on all of
But
those.
that's less likely.
It's less
than,
likely. There's a few of us.
Yeah.
There's only a few of us in the world.
Overachieving Renaissance people.
But that is a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
And I'll share a little anecdote here. I had a chat with oh my goodness, what is this old mzee's name? He used to be a Kikuyu musician, John.
Katana?
No, not John Katana Mzee. I'll remember his name. But so he used to record back in the day, like in the 60s and 70s. So he would tell me, when I asked him, so who are these? I can hear voices. I can hear oohs and ahs in your songs. Who are these people? June, I don't know. I came out of the studio and I said, Nani hapa naweza cheza drums?
Come.
Ingia studio. And the kids were so happy just to play that they never wrote anything down. They never signed anything. He gave them a little token and they went off with their money. Super happy. Here we are, 40 years later, trying to get this mzee to now
But as well,
retrospectively.
just to mention this, you can also pay for these contributors a one-off fee, or there's that question as well that they can also participate in the revenue share on the royalties.
That one-off fee is their time in studio. That's it.
Still has to be reflected on the
They
split
have an
sheets.
IP right that's guaranteed to them as for their contribution. It's called an equitable right. You can't deny them that. And even if you're just mentioning them and they don't earn, if the law
it's
of
just
your country,
the question is that they might be just mentioned doesn't mean that they have be earning on that,
if
because
the
they
law
were
of your-
taken.
No, not necessarily. If the law of your country has a provision that says that the related rights holders who are performers do get an equitable contribution. In our case, it's PRISC who does that. That's the Performers' Rights Society of Kenya. There is a provision that if you are a background singer, you don't own the song, but you get an equitable remuneration or some fair payment.
Even if you were paid a one-off fee
Even
to
if
perform
you were paid. That was your studio session fee, right? In some countries, that law doesn't exist. There was the Beijing Treaty, I believe, and some other treaties that allowed, I think the WPPT treaties that allowed people who were contributors.
Okay.
Think about it from an acting point of view. If I don't know who are the great actors now, who's doing a good job?
You know what? I'm still Al Pacino, Robert De Niro.
Okay, so if I was to look like for a local artist, right?
Yeah.
A local Moby Minor,
Nick
right?
Mutuma.
And Nick Mutuma, okay? So if the difference between them and maybe somebody who's just started out in the industry will determine A, how much they get paid, the placement of that film, how quickly it does well at the box office, and even where their name appears on the credits. So it's similar.
Yeah.
If you ask young artist so and so to sing this song versus if you ask Beyonce to sing this song, it's gonna it's gonna do what it's gonna do because it's Beyonce.
Okay.
And not saying that this young artist doesn't have talent, but they're not yet there. They don't have the clout yet.
So
that counts for
equitable
something.
rates.
Equitable remuneration. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Last, before we go to money, and just the last thing about how to manage money and how to advise on that. Also, just you mentioned PRISC. There's also CAMP. There's also MCSK. Can you just wrap it out as well and just give us
happily. CAMP is the Kenya Association of Music Producers. It's the record labels, it's the independent producers, the people who self-produce their recordings. And they basically have been around since, I believe, 2008 is when they got their license to start operating. PRISC is the Performers' Rights Society of Kenya, and who handle the related rights guys who are performers, instrumentalists, session musicians, part of the master rights, okay? And together with CAMP. So they're the 50% that was on this side, if you remember. On this end, we have the Music Copyright Society of Kenya, who handles the copyright, which is the authors, the composers, the publishers, and the arrangers. You'll notice I didn't mention artists. You'll notice I didn't mention singers. So it always baffles me why everybody says MCSK represents the artists. It's not true. Unless the artist is an author, is a composer, is a publisher, and is an arranger. So those are the three we have in Kenya who handle music. And the law under the Copyright Act has given them the right through the Kenya Copyright Board to go out to the public and collect money from people who use either the musical work or the master sound recording. Musical work would be a live band performing at a hotel. They're not performing any of their original songs, but they're performing covers. They need to pay, according to the act, they need to pay for permission to the owners. So that's what MCSK does. When you have a DJ or you have recorded music playing, then that's when Camp and Prisk can charge you money. That's basically their role. So it could be pubs, restaurants, kinyozis, matatus, you name it, radio stations, TV stations, who should be the biggest payers right now and are not
enforced to pay
enough. Yes.
And that's what has to change, I think.
That's the issue. That's the biggest issue. The enforcement has not been left to the government. The enforcement is left to the actual CMOs. We call them? Collective Management Organizations, or CMOs. And so if I have to take radio station X or TV station X to court, I have to make a decision as to whether I pay my members their royalties or pay a lawyer fees and stay in court battling this thing out for 5 or 6 years. So there's a lot of issues currently. I mean, they have their mandate, but part of it is, as I said, they're member organizations. So members should really be more involved.
Proactive, just active in this.
Proactive, exactly.
Eventually, that's how things change, right?
That's how things change.
And the moment this changes, I think this is when we're going to be coming out from this, what we oftentimes call like a music scene or entertainment scene, to an industry. Because that is really where...
Sector. I think the word they used to use is sector, which is just like a little square in the whole, but an industry is exactly. I believe we already are. If the piracy statistics are as big as we're talking billions, we are already an industry, but we're not formalized. And that's a note to people like KRA, to sort of say we are in the group that is called other. We don't have they don't have we're not professionals. We don't charge professional fees, apparently. So please take note of how much money we can potentially give to this country's GDP, or are already doing so, and put some structure in place, give us a more favorable tax regime. I mean, there's so many things that we can appeal for, but some of the bodies that we're speaking about could be great avenues for some of those conversations.
100%.
But if we're not members...
Cool. Right? So we've chatted about all the different income streams, all the different organizations that can help you, to collect it together, how to diversify. In closing, let's quickly talk about, because there's no right or wrong, but what are your advices to the talent that you work with or represent in terms of now, once they get their money, how to manage their money, how they should allocate it,
So the first thing I'll say that supports how you get your money and how much you can charge is register your IP. Register your copyright at the Kenya Copyright Board. Get that little title deed so you don't spend time arguing with people.
I believe there's a drive right now.
Before June 30th, it is free. You can upload as many pieces of music, as many, songs, whatever it is that you've created.
For free.
Until June 30th, it is free on the National Rights Registry. So check out their website and go and do that now. So register it, because then when anybody infringes or you have a problem where there's a dispute, that paper, that certificate helps to prove that you are the owner. If it's your logo, if it's your brand, your pseudonym, register the trademark so that you have those in your back pocket. They're the first, it's like your business incorporation. Second thing is incorporate your entertainment service delivery. Register a business trade name or register a company. Just stop being the briefcase guy.
Exactly.
It's
okay
come
to
on,
pay
it's 2022,
taxes.
man. It's 2022.
Exactly.
So everything is sort of like a vicious cycle. If you don't organize your house, and be able to send a contract or even like a properly formed invoice, what are you doing? Like, what are we doing? And how are we moving? The third thing I would say is then consult. I don't need you guys to be lawyers. That's why we're here.
Mm.
That's why we're here. And so get the help that you need. I'm not a marketer, so if I need somebody to help me, position myself, do a nice photo shoot, everyone says, "Oh, send me your kit." Then the guys are, kit nini ni sasa. Like, organize yourself. Have the things that you need in your back pocket to sell yourself, and then be engaging with your fans, because I think that's the other thing. Market will always decide. The market will always decide what kind of music you do, but then be authentic, because I think people can tell when you're just, faking it or pretending or trying to be like somebody else. And some of those pieces of advice I'm giving as an artist myself, the first three are definitely in my capacity as a lawyer, but definitely you need to consider these things. And then I think tied to that is know your worth, but then also know what the budgets are. It's a very different conversation.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a gray line,
It's a
right?
gray line.
You have to sass it out. You have
Me,
to.
I've performed for 10K, and I know I'm not worth 10K, but I've considered certain things. What will this particular gig do for me? Who is in
Network,
the
that-
room? Will I be
exactly.
able to then network? Okay, I can do my hair and I can buy myself a nice outfit. So it was never about the money. I could see past that producer is
Yeah.
the person I've been trying to reach, and he's in that room. I'll do it. So, and I know for a fact that does not say that that's June's rate. What will I do? I'll raise an invoice that says severely discounted rate.
Yeah, it
For
was
this
actually
particular,
100K.
it
I've
was
given you 90%.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'll put 100K
Yeah,
and
yeah.
say discounted partner rate, 90% off. Here's what you can pay me as a token.
Yeah.
So those types of things you can only do if you've already started to look at yourself as a business. So that's what I would say to my fellow creatives.
Perfect. And what I would just add to that is, reinvest into your business, right? You really have to focus on that. I've been working with some great artists who have really understood it. I've seen many other artists do exactly the opposite.
Blow
Spend the
all the
money
money. Yeah.
exactly, buy a car, buy this. And most of the time what they buy it has a high depreciation value if they
Yeah.
at least went and bought apartments, etc.
Yeah,
Sure.
that
But I
appreciate.
think,
Yeah.
invest early on into your craft, build it up so you don't have to be necessarily saving when you're making the hundreds of thousands of shillings. Start saving then and have a good saving plan where you've invested enough once you're making millions of shillings potentially or something down the road. It's always good to save right throughout.
And from the beginning,
Yeah.
quick story, the cheapest share on the Nairobi Stock Exchange is something like 75 cents. And the rule is that you can buy 100 shares. That's the minimum.
Yeah.
What is 75 cents times 100?
Yeah, yeah.
What is that?
750.
750
Yeah.
shillings. That's half the price of a bottle of
Yeah, yeah.
something. Yeah. So you're very right in terms of reinvesting, and you don't have to have a million bob, to start. So I
Yeah.
think those are some of the things we really need to start thinking about.
Cool. I think we've discussed a lot of things about money. I wish we had a little bit more time
I know,
still,
I know.
because we can really deep dive into so many things in terms of, how to look after your money, where else the money is coming from, learn
Yeah.
more about the rights. I think I've been in the business for over a decade, and I still sometimes struggle
Yeah.
just putting it in place in terms
Call
of
me,
master,
Marek,
trademark,
call me.
copyright.
Yeah.
That's why we have June. But guys, thanks so much for coming. June, thanks for coming on this.
My
I had
pleasure.
a
Thank
blast
you.
hosting today and talking about money. I'm sure we're going to be talking more, and we'll see each other elsewhere. Hope you guys had a good informative session. Muthoni, you'll be back very soon. We miss you, girl.
Yes,
And
from auntie
all
and
the
uncle.
best.
Yeah.
Uncle and auntie. Thanks a lot, guys. Hope you had fun and hope it wasn't